Is power about having great strength, or having the courage to overcome great odds, to silence the doubt and the doubters, influencing others, or believing in yourself? Is power about having the ability to imagine what comes next, or an uncontrollable curiosity, standing together, or being brave enough to stand alone? Is power having knowledge, or just knowing who you are and what you have to give? Or is it an inner wisdom that comes with a long-held passion to learn everything about a subject, just so you can improve it? At Rolls-Royce, we recognize that power shows itself differently in different people. That's why, for us, our power is our difference, and our difference is you.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for this early careers event about sustainability on the theme of wisdom. I'm Rachael Everard. I'm head of sustainability for the Rolls-Royce Group. I'm based in London, in the UK, at home today, as you can tell. And I'm joined by a fantastic panel group of some of our early careers professionals at the organisation for this conversation. Before we dive into the conversation, I wanted to just take a few minutes just to introduce myself and introduce the topic of sustainability at Rolls-Royce. So I joined the company 7 years ago now, which feels like a while ago. I joined straight out of university onto a graduate program, and now act as the head of sustainability for the group. And I appreciate that's a super vague, lofty job title, and I still have a hard time explaining to my mum and dad what I do day to day. But essentially, I am responsible for working across the organisation to look at Rolls-Royce's social, ethical and environmental impacts, and try and work with the business to make sure that we are acting in a socially, environmentally responsible way, that we're fulfilling kind of what society, what people expect of us on a day-to-day basis as a large corporate or a large company, really. And we're living up to those expectations. And perhaps even more excitingly, we're actually going beyond just meeting minimum expectations and really looking for opportunities to be a company that contributes to a sustainable community, society, environment, and actually can really play an exciting role in leading what we like to term the net zero transition. And I think as an organisation with a proud history of engineering and innovation, we have a really, really exciting role to play in addressing the climate crisis that we are facing as a society. So I want to just talk for just a couple of minutes about kind of what my day-to-day activities looks like before I introduce the panelists. So in kind of my day-to-day, I'm interacting with people from across the organisation, whether that's people that are on our shop floor or in our offices, people that also work with us that are outside the four walls of Rolls-Royce, whether that's members of government, customers, members of like the flying public who might be accessing Rolls-Royce or might not even know who Rolls-Royce is actually, but talking to them about what it means to be a socially and environmentally responsible company and how we can live up to their expectations. So what I would then do is look to translate that requirement into corporate language, corporate speak, bring that back into the business, bring, for example, an expectation of a green zero carbon flight, and bring that back into the organisation and say, right, this is the expectation, how are we going to deliver that? So over the last few years, we've been actively involved in looking at the transition to net zero carbon in particular. Very proud that Rolls-Royce has made some really bold statements around how we want to be a net zero carbon company in the future and are targeting net zero by 2050 at the very latest. Also looking across our social and ethical aspects of our sustainability business to see what it really means to be an organisation that has a social licence to operate, and that acts in accordance with our current understanding of the limitations that are being placed on us as a society. I have the pleasure of working with fantastic people across Rolls-Royce, one of which is Alicia, who's joined us on the panel today. But one of the things I like to say a lot is that although I might have the pleasure of having the title head of sustainability at Rolls-Royce is something that every single person in the organisation has to contribute to, is a part of, and it's certainly not in any one individual's remit to be able to create a more sustainable Rolls-Royce or a more sustainable future for us all. We are a company that's been around for 100 years more, and I fundamentally believe that if we want to be here for 100 years more, we need to make sure that we are acting sustainably, responsibly across everything that we do, and that requires all of our people to be a part of it. So without further ado, I want to introduce the other panelists that have kindly joined me today. And I'm going to go around in turn to ask each of them to introduce themselves to you, to share a little bit about their background and what the role is that they currently do at Rolls-Royce. So I'm going to go in the order that I can see people on my screen, and I apologise if that's not the order that everyone else can see. But I'm going to start with Timothy, please.
Hello, everyone. It's good to talk to you today. My name is Timothy, and I'm currently a graduate engineer, graduate trainee within electronics. So my first attachment is in the electronics control system, and I'm currently based in Birmingham, Solihull. Yeah, and I joined the company around 3 months ago. Yeah, so I'm really new compared to Rachel, like 7 years, you said. Yeah, and I'm currently working on the development of the EEC for the UltraFan, which is our Rolls-Royce newest engine, like future engine. Yeah, so excited that I can be here today. Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, Timothy. Way to make me feel very old. Alicia.
Amazing, thank you. So yes, hi everyone, I'm Alicia Dadlani. I am a Sustainability Associate at Rolls-Royce. So that means I work with Rachel, like she said, in the central sustainability team. And, very much as Rachel said, we look at that overall sustainability strategy, what is the most material contribution that Rolls-Royce can make to creating a more sustainable world, which I find is one of my most exciting questions. And then how do we actually implement that and embed that in the organisation? So for me in particular, this last year, what I've been working massively on is COP26, which hopefully everyone on the call is aware of and maybe watched on the news a little bit. So of course, like Rachel said, this year has been a big year for us in terms of our net zero strategy and our goals. We set our commitment actually last year, but this year published our strategy. And then coming on from that, COP26 was a really important milestone for us Rolls-Royce to be there, to show up and to talk to policymakers, negotiators, and the general public about what is our role in that net zero future. So for me, last year has been organising how do we make the most out of this opportunity of COP26 and what's Rolls-Royce's role at COP26, which I'm sure hopefully we'll talk about a little bit later.
Thanks, Alicia. And then finally, last but definitely not least, Farah.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, my name is Farah and I'm currently doing the graduate scheme working within the networks team in Group IT. I joined Rolls-Royce in September this year, and so far it's been incredible. It's such an incredible experience. I've always had an interest in aero engines and Rolls-Royce as a brand, so it made sense for me to apply for a role at Rolls-Royce. So far, I've been working alongside the network team in various projects ranging from demolition of buildings that are no longer in use to creating roadmaps, detailing projects that we're going to be starting in 2022 and distribute that to the wider company. So far, it's been extremely interesting and exciting to understand how Rolls-Royce works, but the main thing that stood out to me was the fact that the team are so helpful and they really do care about you as a person, and they take your interests and your future goals and interests. When I joined, they assigned me with a mentor, a buddy, and a career coach, and they've been having one-to-ones with me, where they ask me what my future goals are. I expressed I wanted to be a business analyst or a project manager in the future, and within 2 weeks, they enrolled me onto a project leadership course, which really helped shape my understanding on what I need to do to become a successful project manager. I've only been here for 3 months, but I'm so excited to learn more and be part of a company that's really pushing towards a sustainable future.
Thank you so much, Farah. And actually, you answered what was going to be my first question, which was really around what kind of inspired you to join Rolls-Royce. So I guess, Timothy, I'm really interested in what drew you to Rolls-Royce.
Yeah, so my background is an electronic engineer. So at first I thought Rolls-Royce, oh, it's a very mechanical engineer company because, well, we are known for gas turbines, for airplane gas turbine. And I thought, okay, it's very mechanical, but I think no, there must be a part of electronic in the aircraft, and it is EEC. Or for those who doesn't know what EEC stands for, it stands for Electronic Engine Controller. So basically, in an engine, you have an oil pump and some fuel pump and some safety electronic components. Well, we control the engine. Well, the pilot controls the engine via that EEC. So that's a very complicated thing, but to simplify it, yeah, that's how it works. And when I first joined the company, I thought, okay, what I'm going to work here? Okay, my first attachment is in electronic control system, and I didn't know that there's a lot of things that is connected with electronics. And for those of you who doesn't study mechanical or aerospace engineer, don't worry, because there's a lot of space that Rolls-Royce needs, like manufacturing, and then even the business side. Now Rolls-Royce has a business and enterprise graduate. So if you're studying business as well, like you can apply for the graduate scheme for the 2022. Yeah, and what excites me about sustainability is how much Rolls-Royce has put into research and development for their hybrid electric aircraft, and then also how I think Rolls-Royce have a deal with a SMR recently, if you read the news, which is a small modular reactor from the industry sectors. Yeah, and the amount of work that is needed to design an engine is very long, maybe 7 to 10 years for a new engine to be in the market and to be used by Airbus or Boeing or any other aircraft company. So that really motivates me to do it, to apply, and okay, I'm going to work in a very collaborative environment. I need to work across different teams. I need to discuss all of this thing with other people. So it really motivates me to ask something to people that I never knew about, never knew before, in other team, in other side. Yeah, I think that's what I think.
Great, thanks, Timothy. And I should have said actually at the start, please do enter any questions that you have for myself or the panelists into the chat box on the screen. So please do send your questions in, and we'll pick those up as they come through. I wanted to ask, actually, Timothy, in your introduction, you mentioned you're working on the UltraFan, which is Rolls-Royce's next generation of large aero gas turbines. So it's a really big project for the future of Rolls-Royce. Did you expect to be 2 months into the company working on such a project like that?
No, actually, it's kind of a dream working for Rolls-Royce. And when I started working, and okay, you're going to work on this demo is going to be put in the UltraFan later in the future. And I was like, okay, I'm still new. I don't know anything. Even the description language, the code language that I'm using, I'm still learning that. And I'm given a very big responsibility to do this. But to know that your design, what you're doing now, is going to be used in the future, or in some sense, you're going to use the plane to go everywhere later. And you know that, okay, look at that wing, look at something under that wing. That's something that I designed and my team. It has some pride. It has some pride in you can feel some pride in yourself that's saying, I'm the one that designed it. I'm one of the people who designed that. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I think that's such a great example of actually being able to really contribute to something really major very early on in your career. And I want to come to Alicia, because in your introduction, and I obviously know that you've been working on COP26, which has been a really big thing for the UK, for humanity, if I'm not pushing it too much, and specifically for Rolls-Royce. So what was it like to work on such a high profile event, and just how do you feel about that?
Big questions. I love it. So, yeah, I guess, like you said, COP26 is this huge milestone on the global journey towards net zero. And I guess to give a bit of an introduction of why that was so important. So COPs happen every single year. They've been happening since 1995, but this year for COP26 was a milestone COP, which means that for the first time since the Paris Climate Agreement, all nations had to come together for the first time and agree to elevate their ambition on their greenhouse gas reduction commitments. And that meant that there was a huge amount of momentum and hubbub and excitement in the global economy in the lead up to COP, because what it meant was every nation had to pull together their own net zero plan and also their shorter term greenhouse gas reduction plan, how they were going to achieve that. And of course, how you achieve as a nation your greenhouse gas reduction is very much to do with the businesses who are working in that company and in that country, but also internationally. And so this was the first COP, the first big UN global conference like this, where businesses were very much invited in to play a key part and have a big voice in the negotiations and the panel discussions, to come and say, right, these are the technologies which we have and we can contribute to, these greenhouse gas reduction commitments. And that's exactly what Rolls-Royce is looking to do there. So for me, working on pulling together that strategy and pulling together what Rolls-Royce's contribution is to net zero, what are the key technology levers that we have, and how do they fit into that broader global external context? That's what I was doing for the lead up to COP. And then actually when we were there, it was, this incredible excitement, zoo, chaos kind of feeling of everyone there for the same shared goal of wanting to address climate change, but all with different strategies and ways to approach it. And so our key purpose there was kind of lobbying and talking to the negotiators and politicians, etc., about what's the technology that we can provide. So yeah, it was absolutely incredible, I suppose, for me to get to go there and actually play a key part in speaking to negotiators and policymakers about how do we achieve net zero in reality.
Great, thanks, Alicia, and your obvious enthusiasm and energy and excitement around this shines through. I wanted to ask, Farah, you talked about right in your introduction around kind of being excited about a sustainable future for Rolls-Royce. What is it that kind of excites you the most about that vision, and how do you what's inspired you to think about sustainability at Rolls-Royce?
I think being part of a company that pushes forward for a sustainable future is the main thing for me that excites me. And being part of a company that does that, I think that's really important. And, with sustainability in the future, it's really important now. And I think it's such a big topic for a lot of people. So to be part of a company that thinks like the future thinking is really important for me.
Great, thank you. And I think one of the things that's really important is that we don't just think about sustainability as the long-term future of the organisation, it's the here and now as well. And a question that's come through in the chat is around the 2023 goals that we have established as an organisation, and perhaps I just talk about what those are. So we have our net zero vision. That's fantastic. It's 2050, and that feels like quite a long time away. I've been at the company for 7 or 8 years, so 2050 maybe feels a bit closer than it does for those that have only been with us for a couple of months. But what we have set is short-term goals that actually will help us to demonstrate really meaningful progress over the next 3 years. So for each of our businesses, so our civil, our defence and our power systems business, we've identified some of the levers that we can pull in the immediate future. And in particular, one of those is around proving that our engines can be compatible with what we call a sustainable fuel, so a fuel with a lower life cycle CO2 impact than conventional fossil fuel. So it's almost like taking your petrol car or your diesel car of today and being able to put in a different fuel that is a lot cleaner and a lot greener, and that doesn't act any differently in your car than if you just filled up at your general petrol station. So what we're doing is proving that engine compatibility. And the question really is around kind of how are we meeting that under the current situation, which I assume is related to the COVID pandemic, and the obvious impact that that's had on industry and the organisation specifically. Perhaps, Alicia, a question for you off the back of that really is, how have you felt that appetite for sustainability has changed, or has it, under the kind of immediate pressure of COVID?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I'd say it's almost hard to separate this year and last year, I suppose, from the impact of COVID, isn't it? But over the last 2 years, we've certainly seen sustainability rise very high in terms of the agenda of our executive and our senior team, but also in terms of the employee awareness and importance given to sustainability. In terms of specifically how the COVID situation, I think, maybe even accelerated the importance of sustainability and even more so with climate action. I think it gave everyone in the world, I think, a sense of the importance of collaborative action towards these important social goals that we have. These are big structural world issues that we all have realized we have to come together and address at the same time. And climate change is similar in that way, and that we have to recognize we all have to do it together. So I'd say it's definitely advanced and accelerated in the last couple of years.
Thank you. And I guess a question to Timothy and Farah, joining the company just a couple of months ago, as you both had, and the kind of aftermath, or actually it's not an aftermath, ongoing impact of COVID is still felt in the organisation. Have you been surprised at the fact that we are talking about sustainability, we are talking about the future despite that? Sorry, I should have asked one of you to go first. Perhaps Farah, you first, and then I'd like to hear Timothy's thoughts as well.
No, I wasn't surprised. I think with the company, I think everyone's adapted quite well. I mean, especially, COVID just came out of nowhere and it hit everybody quite hard. But I think everyone's been, still going on with what they're doing, adapting to the changes. So I've not been so surprised. But yeah, it's been interesting to see. Really interesting.
Yeah, so it really excites me because when COVID came, Rolls-Royce is developing a lot of things. And even though the business is hit very hard by COVID due to the border restriction and all those airplane or those travel measures, but the business really focuses on sustainability instead, and they still develop for the future engine to be sustainable, to be very fuel efficient. So if you ask me if it surprises me, yeah, it surprises me because, well, the business is very hit by COVID, but on the other side, it still put a lot of money to the research and technology side of the not also sustainability, but also the research for the future engine.
Great, thank you. Another question that's come in, and thank you. Do keep submitting your questions in. It's great to the level of detail that's coming through in the questions, is about our recent announcement on a collaboration with Shell. It was on the decarbonisation of aviation. In particular, the question is related to the role of sustainable aviation fuels, SAF production. Just as background context, we announced a collaboration. We've announced a number of collaborations over the last couple of months because I think one of the things that we're really aware of is that in the energy transition, no single company can do this alone, and we have to work in collaboration with our partners across our relationships, whether that's customers like airlines or aircraft manufacturers, or people like the fuels manufacturers, the fuel producers, to help us to get to a point where we can be decarbonising aviation in particular and reach net zero. And I think that's a really important part of our story, and a part of our contribution is actually that role of collaboration. I don't know if any of the, perhaps one again for Alicia actually, is really around kind of how important do you think partnership is in the context of sustainability?
I feel like it's kind of everything in a way, isn't it? For me, sustainability is just the recognition that we depend on a stable environment and a stable society to be corporate sustainability, I should say, depends on the stable foundations of a healthy environment and a healthy society to be able to be resilient and to be successful. And so that's really the heart of that recognition, means understanding that where others can succeed and grow, you will succeed and grow. That's really what resilience and success is all about. When collaboration, I guess, is at the heart of that. So I'd say it's one of the kind of core principles of what sustainability means. And then especially, I suppose, like Rachel said there, in terms of our specifically about our net zero strategy, we recognize that there's elements of that where we have control, and we can do like you've all been doing your research, I suppose, that we can make our engines compatible with SAF, but we can't make the fuel. So collaboration is a key part of making that enabling environment, as we call it, to achieve our net zero strategy. We simply cannot do it without our partners in the value chain.
Great, thanks, Alicia. And another question that's come through on the chat, which I'm going to pass on to Farah and perhaps Timothy, and apologies, this is quite a detailed question, and it's around really the software that we use for analysis in the organisation. And I will confess that I don't use any software at all. I can barely work Excel, as Alicia knows. But as someone that's working in the IT function, perhaps, Farah, you can comment on the kind of software that we do use and how some of that might contribute to sustainability. I apologise. It's very detailed.
I don't actually use any software in my role, so I think probably Timothy might know a bit more about that one.
Sorry, me too. I don't know the software that we are using for analyzing the gas turbine emission. Maybe if that's what you're thinking. Yeah. So. Sorry.
No, that's a fantastic question. I'm afraid we're just probably not quite the right people to answer that one, but perhaps one that we can take offline and come back to you, because I think it's a very detailed question. I'm sure other people in the organisation know the answer to than us for.
I don't want to speculate as well.
Yeah, I could guess, but thank you. It's a great question. Another one that's come through is around the regulatory developments that are important to the green transition. And I think that's a really important question, and something that Alicia and I both spent quite a lot of time at COP26 and in the run up to COP26 was talking about the policy landscape, as we like to frame it, and how important that is to Rolls-Royce's ability to deliver its net zero and sustainability goals. Something we do spend quite a lot of our time doing is looking at how we can make sure that we are advocating for policies that are compatible with what we can do as an organisation, and working in partnership with governments to help them to execute on their policies as well. In the UK, we have the benefit of the UK government setting quite an ambitious net zero carbon target, and we think that Rolls-Royce is really well placed to help to deliver on that. So that's a really good question, and a lot of what we do is spend a lot of time thinking about what's outside of the organisation that might impact or influence us, and how we can in turn impact or influence those outsiders as well. So fantastic. I want to just change tack really slightly, just to talk about one of my favourite projects that's come to fruition over the last couple of weeks, and that is the Spirit of Innovation, the all-electric aircraft. And I can see Timothy grinning, because I'm hoping that's a project that he's excited about too. And I'm just really interested in everyone's thoughts about that, and kind of how important do you think that milestone is for Rolls-Royce and for the future of Rolls-Royce? I should say, sorry, a bit of context. We've recently broken 3 world speed records for all-electric flight with a plane that we call the Spirit of Innovation. And the project itself is called Excel, so it stands for, or it's shortened for, Accelerating the Electrification of Aviation, which is my favourite plane. So perhaps, Timothy, your thoughts on that project?
Yeah, so I was hoping in the future I could be the one that is the development team of the future hybrid electric engine, because I think this will be the future of the civil aerospace before becoming all electric, because let's be honest, the power density of fuel compared to battery, the very best battery now is not that good, like it's very heavy. So the development of the hybrid electric aircraft in the future really interested me. So if someone asks me, okay, what do we want to do in the future, like I'm really interested in doing that, because later then in the future, if that engine is going to be used, then it's already half the emission, rough figures. Yeah, because we can use the combination of electric generators and motors, and combine it with the conventional gas turbines. which will cut down the emission. It's including CO2 and NOx as well. Yeah. Oh yeah, and I want to add as well, like by Rolls-Royce making the Excel, it proves that it's possible to create an all electric aircraft, even though it's still small, but it proves that it is possible to make an all electric aircraft fly, and moreover, it breaks the world record. So, well, Rolls-Royce proves to the world that it's possible.
Great, thanks, Timothy. And Alicia, I know you've had the opportunity to meet the team and spend time with the plane. What was your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I definitely mirror what Timothy said. It's really awesome. At going to sound like a broken record really, but at COP26 we were there displaying a full-size model of the Spirit of Innovation plane in the space there, and my excitement going up to people really was that they had no idea that Rolls-Royce was working on that, and so talking about it, it's really, for me, the amazing part of it is that it really is a complete revolution in the way that we put people into the sky. You know, we've been using a gas turbine to put people into the sky, which is in itself pretty insane and impossible in my eyes anyway, but we've been doing that for the last, is it 100 years? And now we've created this all-electric battery propulsion that's literally a completely different way of putting people in the sky. So for me, it's seeing the Spirit of Innovation. And actually, the first time I saw it alongside the Spitfire, which is one of the first airplanes ever built for flight. Seeing them side by side for me was a really emotional moment, because it just showed the innovation and incredible people that work at Rolls-Royce, that they've been able to produce two of the most impossible pieces of technology that humanity has ever seen, in my opinion. But that's me being very soppy.
Great, thank you. We like a bit of soppy. I think for me, and I'm equally not an aerospace engineer or particularly an aerospace geek, despite 7 years at the company. And I think the Spirit of Innovation plane, firstly, it's a really pretty plane, and I know that's a really strange thing to say, but it is genuinely really exciting. And I think a lot of people in the organisation have been really actually genuinely moved by the project, as well as really inspired by it. So it's fantastic, I think, to see that finally break the record over the last few weeks, and certainly echo your guys' thoughts on how exciting that has been. Another question that's come through in the chat function, and do keep sending your questions in, is around Rolls-Royce plans to work in developing countries that also are looking to reduce emissions. And we've actually spent quite a lot of time so far this evening talking about civil aerospace and aviation in particular. We have a significant part of the organisation, which is our power systems business, and they produce reciprocating engines, fuel cells, engines for application on land, sea, and power generation. And I think personally, there's some really exciting developments happening in that part of the organisation that actually will play a really important role in helping the global transition towards a clean energy system. And what we're doing with a lot of those applications is not just looking at kind of our UK market, as we know today, and we're hosting this call today in the UK, but actually those applications across the world. And we've also touched on the electrification of flight. And one of the things, again, I think was really exciting about that is not just how you decarbonise aviation as we know it today, but actually how you can use zero emission electric flight to connect communities that aren't currently connected, or to really bring about socioeconomic development through transport and through connection, physical connection. So it's a great question, and certainly something that we are looking to do, and has been a big focus over the last few months. And again, Alicia, you spent quite a lot of time in the build up to COP looking at this space. Is that something you want to comment on?
Yeah, and I definitely mirror what you say, I guess, kind of pointing towards our power systems business, as they've launched a whole sustainable power unit as part of their business, and like Rachel said, a range of sustainable technologies where they're not just looking at mitigating the emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions, but also looking at how those technologies can be really resilient to, the world that we're going into, which is going to have more climate impacts. And so a key part of that resilience is actually decentralization of access to energy. So one of the key technologies is their microgrid systems, which is, I always explain it, I suppose, as a bit of imagine a box, and in it you've got some renewable power, you've got battery storage, but then you've also got a brain, basically, that's able to make sure that the supply of energy is going into the battery at the right time, and the battery is then giving it back to the energy grid or energy system when it's needed. Automatically, so that there's no intermittent power issues. So it's basically like power in a box that can be put into remote communities, places where they don't have a national grid, to supply resilient, stable power. And actually the microgrids team have microgrids in small island states where obviously they don't have the connection to national grids, and they're already there today, providing decentralized, resilient, stable power. And as the technologies become even more sophisticated, we'll be looking to put hydrogen fuel cells into those microgrids so that they are completely net zero carbon. So yeah, pretty impressive.
Thanks, Alicia. And I want to change tact slightly, but I want to pick up on a word you used a lot there, which was around resilience, because we were talking about energy resilience and clean energy resilience, but actually resilience is something that we all feel on a day-to-day basis in terms of human resilience or personal resilience. And Farah, you mentioned in your introduction around the role of a mentor, and that's something I've benefited from in my career to date, and I know others will have done. Could you comment just on how that mentor relationship has worked and kind of what opportunities it's opened up for you?
I think that having a mentor at work has really helped me, especially with any questions that I have. My mentor works in the same team as I'm in, so if I have any questions, then I always go to her and ask her. But it's been really helpful to actually work collaboratively together on things, because I'm new and Rolls-Royce is quite big, and to understand something, like a project or just something that started a bit earlier on than when you started, and you have to kind of get to grips with everything. So I think having that mentor has really kind of helped me understand projects going forward. And rather than me kind of being left in the dark, I've got that one person, or I've got several, but that main person I can go to and just ask any questions. I think it's really good, really, really good.
Great, thank you. And I think I know that mentoring and setting up those sorts of relationships is something that Rolls-Royce has been really focused on, and it's an important part of our kind of employee well-being and engagement programs as well. And something that we're really focused on is making sure that we're providing mental health support and other things for everybody in the organisation. And I think particularly those joining new to the organisation and joining probably not quite how you expected your first few months of work to be, kind of all at home or working remotely. So I think that's a really important part of helping people to feel like they're part of the big Rolls-Royce team, and have access to support or access to people that they can ask questions to. And I still benefit from mentors today and still enjoy having people that I can ask sometimes questions that can feel perhaps a little bit silly or a bit like I should probably know the answer to this, but I still don't know how to archive my emails, for example, and finding people that you can share those questions that you might not want to bother maybe your manager or someone like that with. I can see everyone nodding, so I don't know if Timothy, Alicia, you have any more thoughts to add on that?
Alicia, you want to go first?
I suppose I'd very much mirror. So I joined Rolls-Royce about maybe 3 years ago. Yeah, it's getting there. And I felt very much the same as Farah with the support and like having a buddy and having a mentor. And it's just made me think when you said that, Farah, I remember coming into Rolls-Royce and literally having no idea how to deal with just there's just so much going on there. You know, we have 3 big businesses, and then we have a centre team. Within each of those businesses, there's its own business units, and they're all doing these incredible projects. And when you first join, you do think, wow, that's a lot to get to know. But you do get to know it really quickly, because everyone you speak to, they're willing to sit down with you for 10 minutes, half an hour, an hour, and talk you through what they do and what they're working on. And if you can express an interest in something, and I think that's a kind of a key thing coming in as a graduate or as someone new, is just talking to people about what you enjoy and what you like doing and where you want to go, because you will find in Rolls-Royce people really want to help you, and they'll put you in touch with people that can help you get there. So for me, that's been a big booster of mental health, is knowing I have that support around me at Rolls-Royce.
Yeah, for me, apart from my manager, I have one career coach. So he is not in the electronics control systems business, but he's in services engineering. So it's a whole different business. Yeah, whole different business. So I can talk about what do I want to be in the future with him. So I'm going to talk about what my attachment going to be, my next placement, or now it's called gigs in Rolls-Royce. Yeah. And also, apart from that, I have my technical supervisor, which is kind of like a mentor, but he's my supervisor, and I reported directly to him. And he's my supervisor, but he feels like my mentor, because I can ask about anything. I can tell about my problems and what am I facing and what kind of difficulties that I met when I'm doing this project. So the support is really beneficial, should I say? Yeah, it's really beneficial, and it's really good to have someone that you can ask. You can ask to them. And other stories, when I'm doing this project, there is something that I never knew about, and he said to me, okay, I don't know the answer to this as well, please contact somebody, and then try to email him or contact him on Skype or Teams. Well, I did contact him and I introduced myself. Hello, yeah, I'm a new graduate, I just joined, can you please explain this to me? And we spent like 1 and 2 hours talking about it, just because it's the first time we have conversation, so I don't know him before, but he gladly explains it to me really well. And it's not just that one case. I have several times when I did that. And yeah, everyone is really helpful in the business. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Timothy, and thank you so much for all the questions that are coming through on the chat. I'm doing my best to get through them all, but do keep them coming in. It's great to hear what you're interested in knowing more about. So there's a really interesting question that's come through that's around people's engagement in sustainability, and the question talks around kind of perhaps the transition of skills and mentions kind of old industry versus new. And actually, the 3 of you, and I'm not going to put myself in the new and young and interesting bucket, but the 3 of you are all younger people in the organisation, and really interested in your thoughts on what it's like to join an organisation that's kind of perhaps known for being maybe a little bit older or a little bit, I don't know what the phrase would be without offending people, but yeah, a little bit older. And actually, how have you felt that, and how important do you think that is for our sustainability programme? I don't know if anyone wants to volunteer to take that one first. It's a big question. Apologies.
Yeah, I think I'll start. If we want to be, I mean, Rolls-Royce is already a preeminent engineering company since, I don't know, since a long time ago. And if we want to have that, I think it's 100 years, around 100 years. Yeah, and then if we want to have 100 years more, as Rachel said before, we have to adapt, because the industry is changing, and also with the technology that comes with it. I mean, back 100 years ago, you wouldn't know that people will fly in A380, 400 people in an airplane going from, say, Indonesia to United Kingdom with just one go. You wouldn't even consider flying from UK to France. Like, it's just something that is impossible at that time. But we, as a company, accomplish that by making an engine. And now, if we want to we want to be as a dominant company in this sector, we have to develop. We have to keep researching on what is going to be important in the future. And at this time, it's sustainability. Yeah.
So Alicia?
Yeah, so I guess I can see the question in the chat. And I think this is something really close to my heart as well, is what you're talking about, I suppose, is called the just transition of labour in terms of climate change. And for the sake of explaining that's, making sure that where those industries which are dependent on fossil fuels, that they are protected and respected in the transition over to a lower carbon, net zero sustainable future for everyone, and making sure that the skills aren't lost, and that we're protecting those people really. And it sounds like you've read Climate Justice by Mary Robinson. If anyone hasn't read it, I very much recommend, as she very much talks about, that exact theme of how the only way that we can address climate change and the only way we can go about this transition is by taking justice into account, because the reason why we're doing any of this is to protect people. So we can't go all the way to net zero and be, not respecting and protecting people in the meantime, because otherwise it would all be pointless. Climate justice is definitely becoming a more important topic in Rolls-Royce, and I maybe say it always has been, because our sustainability strategy is not just net zero, it's not just the environmental impacts, it's about the whole holistic picture of what sustainability means to our organisation. And so the key job really of us and the sustainability team is to help people with those continuous trade-offs and decisions between, right, well, we're going towards a lower carbon impact technology might mean this, but it also might mean these social impacts on people, and making those decisions as we go. So yeah, I'd say it's always been, I don't know if that really answers the question. So actually, this is a personal thought in terms of actually answering your question of what do we do about those societies and communities which are currently dependent on fossil fuel operations. Well, Timothy mentioned we have a new business that's just been launched, which is Rolls-Royce SMR, which is small modular reactors. They're compact nuclear power stations, which we'll be looking to deploy various places in the UK, but also globally. And these can provide a community with, I think for the UK, that they're going to provide, one SMR can provide about 40,000 skilled jobs. It will provide obviously clean energy for that community, but also heating for that community, and also a myriad of other uses as well. So I guess my answer to that question of what do we do about these communities which are currently dependent on fossil fuels as well, we look to these other clean technologies and how they can be embedded in those societies. It's a long old answer, sorry.
No, that was fantastic. Thanks, Alicia. A much better answering of the question than my really poor paraphrasing, and I apologise to the person that asked the original question. I guess the point I was trying to perhaps get across was that I think although the kind of appetite for sustainability and for decarbonisation is probably the most vocalised in our younger generations of our employees, it's certainly not only or exclusively. And I said right at the start, I think sustainability is something that every single person at Rolls-Royce has a hand in delivering. And I spend most of my time answering emails from anybody in the organisation, any demographic, engineer, non-engineer, different parts of the company, about what they can do to contribute to a more sustainable Rolls-Royce. And I think that's fantastic, and that's absolutely what we need. The more younger people that come in with more ideas and innovation is brilliant. And I think that particularly our graduate, intern, apprentice community are almost the most vocal, as I said, and bring a really fantastic fresh perspective. I think we need that kind of myriad, I guess was what I was alluding to badly. There's a couple of questions that have come through on Rolls-Royce's kind of decarbonisation strategy. And there's a few specifics, but I thought before I dive into some of the specifics, it might just be useful to talk through very high level kind of how we think about how we'll get to a point of being net zero carbon. I've talked a few times around that ultimate goal, but fundamentally there's three elements to our decarbonisation strategy. And those go hand in hand, and we'll come into some of the specifics in a moment. But first and foremost, it's around making our products and services as of today as environmentally efficient as possible. And Timothy mentioned, for example, the UltraFan engine, which is the next generation of aerogas turbine that we're working on, to play a really important role in making that happen. Secondly is the transition to a sustainable fuel, a replacement for the fossil fuels that our business has been built on over the past, and that is applicable across aviation, defence, and our power systems business, is essentially just swapping out the fuel for a cleaner fuel. And thirdly is really exciting disruptive technologies that can accelerate beyond just decarbonising what we have today. So looking at things like electrification of flight, the small modular reactors that Alicia's mentioned, and where we can really actually help society to transition to a net zero carbon future, perhaps more quickly or more easily than we would if Rolls-Royce wasn't kind of involved. And I just wanted to give that context before we dive into a couple of the specifics that have come through on our technology pathway. One of the questions in particular is around the role of electrification in aviation. And I might perhaps ask Timothy for your thoughts on how kind of feasible do you think electrification will be in decarbonising aviation?
I think in terms of, well, I'm looking at the question is, and he or she is asking for long-range aircraft for the next maybe 10, 15 years, maybe it's still not possible for an all-electric aircraft. But I think Rolls-Royce is now developing something called Pivot with Tecnam, and it's a short-range aircraft which is fully electric, I believe. Yeah, it's fully electric and it's still in development. I think the prototype hasn't been made yet, but one collaboration with Airbus, which is the urban air mobility, has been made with Airbus, and I think it's 6 or 5 passengers. So it's kind of a helicopter, but still, the capability of Rolls-Royce is making that. I mean, previously Rolls-Royce is very much focused on gas turbine, but now they are transitioned to the electric side, the electric propulsion of an aircraft engine. So if the main question is how feasible is it, it depends on the battery technology as well, because we need a very powerful battery that is light enough because fuel is very heavy. I mean, battery is very heavy, and when using fuel, when you're taking off, you're burning some of it in the air, and then when you land, you have, I think it's less than a quarter or like less than 10% of the fuel that you take off with. And it's something that Airbus and Boeing is considering when they are designing an aircraft, because there is a limit that how many fuel can you land with and how many fuel can you do with takeoff. So it depends on the battery density. That's my main answer. It depends on the battery density. If the battery industry could keep up with something really innovative with very power dense, I think, very power dense, it will be really great, and it will be sooner. But we are really dependent on the battery from my point of view.
Great, thanks so much, Timothy, and I definitely echo your comments there. I think we will see kind of all electric or hybrid electric aviation in the nearest term in the small end of the market. And the Pivot project is a really exciting one, as is our collaboration with Vertical Aerospace on vertical takeoff and landing. So like the helicopters you were talking about, that's not that far in the future. We'll see that, I think, probably in the lifespan of your guys' graduate programs, or those that are joining the call. I think we'll see that in the next 3 to 5 years. When we look at the larger kind of transatlantic flights, that's a very long way off, and sustainable fuels, or SAFs as we call them in the aviation industry, will play a really critical role in decarbonising those solutions. And there was a related question that was around hydrogen, and kind of what we're doing on hydrogen in aviation. And I think that has some significant complexities to overcome, mostly around storage of hydrogen in particular, and you look to take that into an aircraft that you're then going to put thousands of feet up in the sky. But we are doing some really exciting things for hydrogen in our power systems business, where you don't have some of the challenges that are associated with aviation, because you're based either on a boat or on land, and you can overcome those much more easily. So we did at to go back to COP, and we did debut a fuel cell at COP, and that's something I think we'll definitely see more of in the near term, is actually hydrogen as a really viable solution for decarbonising power generation and land-based transport. More fantastic questions coming through on the chat function. Really detailed questions and really well-researched questions, I must say. So thank you so much for those. And one of them is really around innovation. And the question is specifically around access to market. And that's something that we as a business spend a lot of time doing, making sure that we do competitive intelligence. We understand kind of our niche role in the market and bringing unique opportunities to the market. But I want to take the opportunity while we're on innovation to broaden that out slightly, to think about kind of, for each of you, what does innovation mean to you, and how important do you think it'll be for a more sustainable Rolls-Royce? And sorry, it's a really big, lofty question. But perhaps, Farry, maybe something, I'm just interested in kind of, what do you think of innovation and how important do you think it will be?
Oh, that is a big question there. Yeah, I think innovation is important, and I think it is quite big, especially at Rolls-Royce. We do have an innovation centre in one of the buildings at Rolls-Royce, and you literally go up there and anyone can just share their ideas, and your ideas become something. So you collaborate all together, and you can, any idea that you kind of come up with is not a silly idea, because if you talk with people and you share your ideas together, all of a sudden it becomes a really good idea. And I think collaboration like that, doing things like that with each other, I think it's quite nice and important to be working collaboratively for, a bigger thing.
That's fantastic. And I think what you said there is innovation on any idea, and that's so important. We're not just, we might be an engineering company and we spend a lot of our time thinking about engineering and technology, but it is any idea, large or small, that can actually play a really important role in the company's success. Alicia, I know you spent some time in the innovation team.
Yeah, no, it's going to mention that, as like Farah said, and innovation is kind of key to Rolls-Royce's success, and has been for, one of our terms is trusted to deliver excellence, because it's, you've got to be working on the most innovative technologies that, in the world. And so as one of my graduate placements, actually, I did work in the innovation team, and one of the programs that we ran was the innovation portal, and that's something in Rolls-Royce where a challenge goes out, and it can be something fairly specific or something fairly broad, but asking a key question, a key business question, which has a real tangible kind of commercial reason why we're asking it, is because it's going to go into another project. It really does need an answer that will go to the whole of Rolls-Royce, and it always gets so much so many people submitting ideas to it, which is incredible, because it just shows the kind of ability of people to apply their innovation and knowledge to completely different problems. And then what happens with the winner of that challenge is it then goes into kind of like an incubator, or it's called the accelerator, which is basically like a sand pit, a kind of exercise to try out that idea, see if it works, and then it can be placed into the business where it's needed. So there's programs like that in Rolls-Royce that focus on innovation. But then I guess going forward, for me, one of my key lessons from COP26 was, we'll stop going on about it soon, was really that, a lot of the news came out about COP26 saying it wasn't enough. We didn't go far enough. And I think, there's a fairness in that civil society and the public are saying it didn't go far enough. And so I think that the challenge for businesses going forward with that is, what we're looking for is an evolutionary leap forward. That's what civil society, that's what the public are asking for. And so that's the challenge put to businesses like ourselves that work on technology. We're looking for an evolutionary leap in our technology, and that's going to require innovation, not just in the technology part, but also, like you say, in the kind of project management commercial part. And so my answer to your question, I suppose, is we absolutely need more people like you asking that question, project managers, the commercial people, the strategy people coming into this organisation, asking those sorts of questions and pushing it forward. And you'll be well met, because our strategy for the last, our values for the last couple of years has been agile, bold, collaborate, and simple. And I'd pull on that first one there of agile. We've recognised that we as a business are this kind of big, clunky industrial business, but we want to be a fast technology leader. And so being agile and bold in our ambitions is now part of our value set. So if you come into this organisation asking those questions, being agile, being bold, then you'll certainly be well met.
Great. Thanks so much, Alicia. Timothy, is that something you'd want to comment on as well?
Yeah, so it's not about making it on time, but also making it perfect. Yeah, because you have to make it safe as well, because the technology that we are implementing is very safety critical. So there are lots of check that needs to be done before the product itself goes into the market. And we're saying about ahead of our competitors. We have our own timeline, and usually like our timeline is already set. And when we have successfully achieved that timeline, it's not about our competitors, but it's about ourselves, that, okay, we managed to make this on time with a certain perfection that we have with a certain target that we have set before we start this project. So it's really important to make it on time, but don't forget the safety aspects of it as well.
Great. Thanks, Timothy. That's a really important point. And obviously, when you work in industries that are so safety critical, when you're taking people up thousands of feet into the sky or powering them, powering hospitals and things like that, safety is such an important part of what we do, and really important part of the business's kind of culture, and rightly so. I'm really conscious of the time, so I'm going to try and just rattle through a couple of the questions just so we don't miss them. Which was, well, first one is around kind of Rolls-Royce's involvement in space, and if our panelists don't mind, I'll just comment on that really quickly myself. So yeah, I think space, actually Farah mentioned in her last answer something around kind of going the long distance, and space is kind of the ultimate long distance, but something that we are actively looking at and thinking about how some of our technologies could apply to space travel, and to future space exploration. It's not an area that Rolls-Royce has been kind of involved in significantly in the past, but there's some real read across of technologies, and I think it's a really exciting potential new area for the organisation, and something we are kind of expanding into. So potentially, if you did join an area, if that's of interest, that's something that we are looking at actively. And I've spent actually quite a bit of time over the last few weeks talking to very random people, like people from UK Space Agency and the UK's Royal Astronomer, which has been absolutely fascinating, and I learned a lot about space, although it's not my kind of area of expertise, but certainly something we're looking at. And I know peers, particularly in our defence business, only because of the read across of technologies, are looking at quite actively at the moment. There's another question that's come through that's around electrification, and as we move to increasing electrification rather than kind of conventional fuel sources, does this affect the relevance of mechanical engineers? And again, I might just comment on that one really quickly, because absolutely not. I think, as Timothy laid out earlier in answer to a previous question, electrification is not the kind of solution to all of what Rolls-Royce is involved in today, and certainly not like a nirvana, as we like to think about it in aviation. There's going to be a myriad of different solutions that are going to be relevant, and that includes increasingly thermomechanical engineering, and perhaps we'll see a bit more of a read across of different skills. And I think certainly we talked earlier about collaboration and partnership. I think there'll be a lot more of that, but certainly definitely not the case that mechanical engineering is not relevant in the organisation. And you know, the fact our CEO is an engineer, and as is a lot of our leadership team, I think that resonates. And engineering is certainly not going away, even as we transition to be more of a technology company. Engineering sits at our core. So I think, I'm conscious of the time, I think that's unfortunately probably all we will have time for this evening. And thank you so much for all of the questions that have come in. Obviously really well researched and really thought through, which is brilliant. And I just want to take a moment to say thank you so much to Farah, Timothy, Alicia for your time this evening. It's been a great conversation. Before we just close out, I do have one final question, and it's just a really quick kind of round the table question, which was just to get your thoughts on what excites you about a sustainable future for Rolls-Royce. And I'll perhaps start with Alicia, just because she works with me, so I can put her on the spot first with that. So just, yeah, what excites you about sustainability in the future at Rolls-Royce?
For me, I think it's that that combination and maturity that we're now seeing in terms of sustainability. People aren't just talking about it in terms of environment and climate change. We are talking about it in that holistic sense of the impact we can have on people and planet, and making sure that our move to a more sustainable future and the impact that Rolls-Royce can have on that takes into account that holistic picture. That's what I'm most excited about.
Thanks, Alicia. Timothy.
Yeah, as I said before, it's hybrid electric propulsion engine for the aircraft, because I believe that in the future that will be the one that is made first before the all electric aircraft can be electric long range aircraft. I think the one that is more feasible is hybrid electric from my point of view, and I'm really excited to be part of it. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And Farah?
Yeah, same as Alicia and Timothy. I think being part of it is exciting, 100% exciting for me, and I echo both Alicia and Timothy's comments.
Great, thank you so much. So yeah, just to say thank you again for your time. Thank you for all of the questions that came through. I think for me, the thing that excites me is actually thinking, I fundamentally believe that Rolls-Royce has a really exciting contribution to make to a more sustainable future. And I hope that anyone that is in the company feels that, and anyone that's looking to join the company feels that as well. And do encourage you to think about the really, important role that you could each individually play as part of that. So I think that's such an exciting and inspiring notion for me personally. There will be an email that will come out to everyone that's been involved in the event this evening with some more details and I think a survey at the end of that. So thank you so much again, everyone, for your time and your contributions. And I hope to have the chance to speak to you again in the near future. And I hope that you are all inspired to join Rolls-Royce. Sorry, I can see the organizer just putting something in the chat, so maybe just bear with. Okay, no, sorry, just for me. So thank you again so much.